Juliet was a 13 years old girl, and John was 14 years old boy. They had been friends since childhood. They lived in the same neighborhood, attended the same church, and had even go to the same school together. Their friendship was strong, and they loved spending time together. People in their community admired their friendship and often commented on how close they were. Their parents were also very aware of them and were happy to see their children getting along so well. In fact, their parents had become friends themselves, often inviting each other to events and gatherings. Juliet and John loved doing things together. They would often go for walks, have picnics, and watch movies. They shared similar interests and values, which made their friendship even stronger. They were both kind, caring, and always looked out for each other. Juliet and John's friendship was truly admirable. People in their school and church would often talk about how intelligent and responsible they were. Their teachers would use them as examples of how students should behave and perform academically. They were always well-dressed, punctual, and respectful to their elders. Their friendship was built on trust, mutual respect, and a deep understanding of each other. They would often do their assignments together, either at John's house or Juliet's. John had a phone, which they would use to research and complete their assignments. Sometimes, they would also watch movies together on John's phone, just for fun. Their families were delighted to see them getting along so well. They would often invite each other over for dinner, and Juliet and John would spend hours talking and laughing together. Their parents would sometimes join in, and they would all have a great time together. The head of their class would often praise Juliet and John in front of their peers. "They are an example of what it means to be good friends and responsible students," she would say. "They always come to school on time, are well prepared, and participate actively in discussions." Their classmates would look up to them, and some would even try to emulate their behavior. In church, the pastor would often use Juliet and John as an example of what it means to be good friends and followers of God. "They are a shining example of how we should treat each other with love, respect, and kindness," he would say. The congregation would nod in agreement, and some would even come up to Juliet and John to congratulate them on their beautiful friendship. One day, Juliet visited her friend John and was returning home, feeling hungry. As she entered the sitting room, she didn't see her parents, which was unusual since it was a Saturday and they were usually at home. She decided to check their bedroom, thinking they might be resting or watching TV. As she approached the bedroom door, she heard some unusual sounds coming from inside. She stopped in her tracks, wondering what her parents were doing. The sounds were unfamiliar to her, and she couldn't quite figure out what they were doing. Juliet's curiosity got the better of her, and she leaned in closer to the door, trying to listen more carefully. She was still unsure what the sounds were, but they seemed to be coming from her parents. She thought to herself, what could they be doing that's making those noises? Juliet stood at the door for some minutes, hearing the sounds and wondering what was going on. She thought to herself, it seems like what they are doing is giving them so much joy and pleasure. Maybe I shouldn't disturb them. After a while, Juliet decided to go to the sitting room and wait. She thought that when her mother comes out, she can tell her that she has been waiting for a while and ask for some food to eat. She was very hungry and wanted her mother to prepare her favorite noodles. Juliet sat down in the sitting room and waited again for another 30 minutes. But her parents didn't show any sign of coming out. She thought to herself, should I go to the kitchen to get food for myself? But then she remembered that she wanted her mother to prepare her fried noodles, and she didn't want to make it herself. After waiting for another 15 minutes, Juliet decided to go back to John's house to tell him what had happened. She stood up and went back to John's house, wondering what her parents were doing and when they would come out of their bedroom. Juliet arrived at John's house, and as she entered, John looked up at her with a curious expression. "Hey, I thought you said you were going home to have lunch," he asked. Juliet nodded. Yeah, I was, but I came back because, well, my parents were busy, and I didn't feel like waiting for them to finish whatever they were doing. John raised an eyebrow. Oh, okay. No problem. My mom actually left some jollof rice for me before she went to work today. We could share it together if you're hungry. Juliet's face lit up. Really? I love jollof rice. Yeah, that would be great, thanks. John got up and went to the kitchen, returning with a plate of jollof rice. They sat down in the living room. And as they ate together, they chatted about their day. After they finished eating, they decided to take a break outside. They sat down on a couch in the compound, and John pulled out his phone to watch a movie. As they sat there, Juliet suddenly turned to John and said, "Hey, I need to tell you something." John looked at her curiously. "What's up?" Juliet hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I saw my parents doing something in their bedroom, and I was really surprised. I've never seen them do anything like that before." John's eyes widened. "Doing something? What kind of thing could that be?" Juliet shook her head. "I'm not even sure. I've never seen anything like it before. To be honest, I'm still trying to figure out what it was." John leaned in, intrigued. "Tell me more. What did you see?" Juliet came closer to John and said, "I don't know how to explain the game, but when I went home, I rushed to the sitting room, and they were not there. I went to the bedroom to call them, but I was about to open the door when I heard them making some funny sounds. I peeked through the door, and I saw them on the bed. I don't know what they were doing, but it seemed like it was giving them joy." John smiled and said, "I see." Juliet replied, "What do you mean by that?" John said, "It's like I have seen my parents doing a similar thing like that before. I have seen them doing something like that in their bedroom twice, but I didn't want to tell you. I felt like it was their little secret. And I have also watched it on my phone many times." Juliet was surprised and said, "You have seen your parents doing the same thing too? And you have also watched people doing that kind of thing on your phone?" John turned to her and said, "My dear, I am sorry I didn't tell you or mention anything like that for so long. I just couldn't figure out exactly what they were doing, but I think it's giving them joy." Juliet nodded her head and said, "Yes, it was really giving my parents joy when I saw them doing it." Juliet came closer to John and said, "Hey, John, can we go to the bedroom and do it?" John looked at her and said, "I don't think that's necessary. I think that thing is meant for adults, not for children like us." Juliet smiled and said, "Oh, come on, John. That thing are meant for everybody, not just adults. Why can't we have some fun and do it together?" John thought for a moment and said, "I'm just tired for the day. Maybe by tomorrow we can go to my bedroom and play." Juliet's face lit up, and she said, "Okay, that sounds great. I'll take my leave now, and we can plan to do it tomorrow." The two friends hugged, and Juliet left John's house, excited for their planned game the next day. The next day, Juliet rushed to John's house. "Hey, John, don't you remember we were supposed to do that thing today?" Juliet asked, rushing into John's house. John looked up, a bit surprised, and said, "Oh, wow. I almost forgot. Let's go to the bedroom and start doing it." Together, they rushed to the bedroom, eager to start their game. As they began doing it, they both felt a little bit of pain in their legs. "Wow, the thing is so sweet, but I'm feeling a little pain in my legs," Juliet said, screaming with excitement. John laughed and said, "Me too. The thing is so sweet, but I'm feeling a little bit of pain in my leg." They both continued doing it, enjoying themselves, despite the initial discomfort. As they played, Juliet said, "No wonder those people in the phone and parents were really enjoying it. The thing is very, very interesting and so much fun to play." John nodded in agreement and said, "Maybe if we continue doing it, we will become used to it and won't be feeling much pain in our legs." Juliet smiled and said, "Yes, just keep doing it. With time, we are going to become so used to it." Come on, let's keep doing it." As they continued doing it, they started to get more comfortable and their movements became more fluid. They were having so much fun, laughing and shouting, that they didn't even notice the pain in their legs anymore. "Wow, I'm so glad we decided to play this game," Juliet said, panting and smiling. John grinned and said, "Me too. It's been a while since I've had so much fun. Let's do this again soon." And with that, they continued enjoying each other's company and the beautiful day in the bedroom. As time went on, Juliet and John's parents had no idea what was going on between the two of them. They just thought that Juliet and John were getting along really well, which made them happy. But what they didn't know was that Juliet and John had developed a habit of playing their favorite game in the bedroom every chance they got. "I'm so glad we started doing this thing, John," Juliet said one day as they were sitting down in the bedroom. "It's so much fun, I know, right?" John replied. "I was a bit skeptical at first, but now I'm hooked. And it's great that we can do it together whenever we want." As they played, they started to notice that they were getting more and more comfortable with each other. They would laugh and joke around, and sometimes they would even have little competitions to see who could easily got tired. "You're getting really good at this, Juliet," John said one day as they were enjoying. "I'm going to have to start practicing more if I want to keep up with you." Juliet grinned and said, "Oh, I don't know about that. I think you're still the champion. But I'm getting closer." As the days turned into weeks, Juliet and John found themselves spending more and more time together. They would play their game in the bedroom. "I'm so glad we're friends, John," Juliet said one day as they were sitting on the couch in John's living room. "You're my favorite," John smiled and said. "I feel the same way about you, Juliet. You're an amazing person, and I'm really lucky to have you as a friend." Their parents were happy to see them getting along so well, but they had no idea what was really going on. They just thought that Juliet and John were being their usual friendly selves. "I'm so glad those two are getting along," Juliet's mom said to John's mom one day. "They're such great kids, and it's wonderful to see them being friends." John's mom nodded in agreement and said, "Yes, it's great to see them having so much fun together. They're really lucky to have each other." But what they didn't know was that Juliet and John's friendship was about to get even stronger. They had started to realize that they had feelings for each other that went beyond friendship, and they weren't sure what to do about it. As the days turned into weeks, John and Juliet's love for the game only grew stronger. They would play for hours on end, completely lost in the fun and excitement of it all. Not quite they were done for school for that section. As the first month of their holiday came to a close, John and Juliet had played their game every single day. And as they played, they started to notice something strange. They were getting closer and closer, not just as friends, but as something more. They would touch each other's arms, or brush against each other's hands, and it would send shivers down their spines. At first, they didn't think much of it. They just thought it was the excitement of the game, or the thrill of competition. But as the days went by, they started to realize that it was something more. They would catch each other's eyes, and hold the gaze for a little too long. They would smile at each other, and feel a flutter in their chests. And they would touch each other, and feel a spark of electricity run through their bodies. John and Juliet didn't know what was happening, but they knew that it was something special. They were falling for each other, hard and fast, and they didn't know how to stop it. As they played their game, they would steal glances at each other, and wonder what the future held. They knew that their lives were about to change, in ways they never could have imagined. And they knew that it was all because of the game that had brought them more closer. Not quite 2 months into their holiday, Juliet was eating with her parents in the dining room when she suddenly felt a wave of nausea wash over her. She immediately got up and ran to the bathroom, her mother following close behind. "Juliet, what's wrong?" her mother asked, concern etched on her face. Juliet was already vomiting, and her mother was shocked. "Did you eat something that didn't agree with you?" she asked. Juliet shook her head, still feeling queasy. "No, Mom, I didn't eat anything that would make me feel like this," she replied. Her mother looked at her with surprise. "Are you sure you're not having any stomach problems?" she asked. Juliet thought for a moment before responding. "No, Mom, I wasn't feeling anything before this." "I don't know what's wrong with me," her mother nodded calmly. "Okay, no problem. Maybe we should go to the hospital and run some tests to see what's going on." Juliet nodded in agreement. "Okay, Mom. I think that's a good idea." Her mother helped her clean up and then they headed to the hospital to figure out what was wrong with Juliet. When they arrived at the hospital, the doctor consulted some tests. He came to them and said, "From the test we carried out, we discovered that Juliet is a month plus pregnant." Juliet's mother stood up, shocked and surprised. "What? A month? Pregnant?" she exclaimed. She turned to Juliet, who was visibly shaken. "How come? How is this possible? Who did this?" she asked, her voice rising in anger and concern. Juliet started shedding tears, and her mother's expression turned from shock to anger. "Who got you pregnant? Tell me the truth," she demanded. The doctor intervened, trying to calm the situation. "Madam, please, don't discuss this here. Maybe it's better to take Juliet home and have this conversation in a more comfortable setting." But Juliet's mother was beyond consolation. She grabbed Juliet's hand and dragged her out of the hospital, determined to get answers. As they arrived home from the hospital that day, Juliet's mother angrily started asking her how she got pregnant. Juliet was unable to speak, still trying to process how she had become pregnant. Her mother demanded to know the name of the man who had gotten her pregnant. Juliet finally found her voice. "I don't have anyone else, Mom. John is my only friend. I don't know how this happened." She paused, confusion and fear etched on her face. "Maybe it's because we do in the bedroom. Maybe that's how I got pregnant." Her mother's expression changed from anger to shock. "What you do? What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Juliet hesitated before answering. "It's a funny something. That's what we normally do in the bedroom." Her mother's face contorted in a mix of emotions, and she couldn't hold back her anger anymore. She broke down in tears, overcome with emotion. Juliet's mother stood up, angry and determined. She rushed to John's house, shouting and calling out for John's mother. When John's mother came out, she asked Juliet's mother why she was shouting and if everything was okay. Juliet's mother ignored the greetings and asked to see John. "Where is your son John?" Juliet's mother demanded, her voice shaking with anger. John's mother came out of the house, looking concerned. "What's going on? Why are you shouting? Just tell me where John is," Juliet's mother repeated. John's mother looked taken aback. "He's inside." "But what's wrong? Has something happened to Juliet?" Juliet's mother took a deep breath. "Your son has gotten my daughter pregnant." John's mother looked shocked. "What are you talking about? That's not possible." Juliet's mother's face turned red with anger. "Don't say that to me. I know it's true. And I'm giving you 24 hours to fix this situation. If my daughter is not back to normal within 24 hours, you'll see the other side of me." John's mother looked defensive. "I don't know what you're talking about. My son would never do something like that. You need to go home and ask your daughter who's really responsible for her pregnancy." Juliet's mother's voice rose. "I'm telling you, it's your son. And I'm not going to let this slide. You need to take responsibility for your son's actions." John's mother stood her ground. "I'm not going to let you bully me or my son. If you have a problem, you need to talk to your daughter about it." the argument continued, with neither side willing to back down. It seemed like the situation was only going to get more heated. John's mother returned to her sitting room, sat down quietly, and began to think to herself. How could this be possible, she wondered. Is it because they're always together? What could have led to this? She sat in silence for a while, trying to process the situation. She thought about Juliet and John, and how they had always been friends. She remembered how they would spend hours together, playing and laughing. As she sat there, John came into the room. "Mom, what's wrong?" he asked, noticing the concerned look on her face. John's mother turned to him. "John, my son, please tell me the truth. Were you and Juliet doing something that I don't know about? Something that could have led to her getting pregnant?" John looked taken aback. "No, Mom, I'm not doing anything with her. We just play and read books together." "I don't know how she got pregnant." John's mother looked at him closely, trying to read his expression. "John, please be honest with me. What kind of games do you and Juliet play when you're together?" John thought for a moment before responding. "We play a game that I saw you and Dad playing in the bedroom. We thought it was a fun game, so we started playing it too." John's mother's eyes widened in surprise. "What game is that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. John looked at her hesitantly before responding. "I don't know if I should tell you, Mom. It's just a game that we play when we're alone." John's mother leaned forward, her eyes locked on John's. "John, please tell me the truth. What is this game that you and Juliet play?" John was about to continue with his story, when his mother asked him to stop, so he could continue the story in Juliet Mummy's house. As they sat down in the living room, John's mother turned to Juliet's mother and explained that she wanted to investigate the situation further. "I want to hear from John himself what game they play in the bedroom," she said. Juliet's mother nodded, still looking angry. "Fine, let's get this over with. I want to know what's going on too." John's mother turned to John and said, "Okay, son, please continue telling me about the game you and Juliet play in the bedroom." John looked nervous, glancing at Juliet's mother before beginning. "Well, Mom, it's just something we do when we're alone. I saw you and Dad doing it once, likewise Juliet, and we thought it was fun, so we started doing it too." Juliet's mother raised an eyebrow. "What game is that?" she asked, her voice firm. John took a deep breath before responding. "It's just a game where we pretend to be adults. We do it together and other things." John's mother looked at him closely, trying to understand. "What do you mean by other things?" she asked. John looked down, embarrassed. "I don't know, Mom. It's just a game. We don't mean to do anything wrong." Juliet's mother stood up, her face red with anger. "I don't believe this." John's mother put up her hand, calming her down. "Let's not jump to conclusions. We need to hear the whole story before we can understand what's going on." John looked up, tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't mean to do anything wrong. I just wanted to have fun with Juliet." The room fell silent, with all four of them looking at each other, unsure of what to say next.